Hello viewers, I'm Daniel Kasahun with this edition of ADDIS Dialogue broadcasting to you on Ethiopian language channel. In this edition we try to touch upon some of the articles put in this publication. This publication is about the Nile and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. It's entitled Discourse. Here with me are the editor and the managing editor of this publication. Dada Desta is the editor and Mikhail Minasse is the managing editor. They will reflect upon some of the articles put in this publication. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
First, why you dedicated this publication entirely for the Nile issue?
Yes. Well, we had some perspectives on this, on the Nile. The Nile was, all the time has been a subject of discussion, debate, controversy. And when you look at it from the Ethiopian geopolitical considerations, we single out the Red Sea and the Nile to be the priorities. And then we were just on the previous edition, we somehow touched upon the Nile, the Red Sea geopolitical considerations, or all the relationships around the Horn, the Middle East, vis-a-vis the Red Sea contestations. And then we wanted to treat Nile in one publication, considering all aspects of it: the geography, the culture, the history, the debates about the water equity and the like, and the controversies, the quarrels, and the relationships of the countries. So it's about the Nile, the river, and the people, and all politics around it. So we want to just carry it, if we can. This is an attempt, if we could do a service to it, to carry all the issues regarding the Nile with one publication, bringing all concerned, knowledgeable experts in the river and in the region.
I see it in the front page. Water catching fire and a question mark. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. First off, let me just add to what Dada said. The Nile has always been flowing in one direction, but the narrative has not been going along. So we wanted to carry that narrative also, the Ethiopian perspective, the lower riparian countries, the upper riparian countries perspective as well, because it has always been dominated by the lower riparian countries. Even the benefits, the interests, the ideological hegemony was all dominated by particularly Egypt, not even the eastern upper Nile countries. So Egypt has been dominating this discussion, this narrative. So we wanted to bring all perspectives from Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt, and all those who care about the Nile and the region. Regarding the water catching fire, it's an ongoing debate. Some are very skeptic, some are pessimistic that water war is looming, and others want to beg to differ, because in this age, in this century, the only option is dialogue. It's not a feasible option to go to violence to ensure your interests. So there are many avenues to ensure your interests through dialogue and a win-win situation. But since this is very contentious, and the countries are at loggerheads because of the colonial legacy, particularly that Egypt is holding on to, the agreements that Ethiopia is not, for that matter, the other lower riparian countries, because they were under colony at that time, they were not part of. So there's a bone of contention going on. So it's not a yet settled case. That I think that's partly to indicate that. and it's not a conclusive
how about
water catching fire. So
how about the contributors? We find lots of article writers in this discourse. How were you able to contact all these people from, we can say, from all over the world? How were you able to find all the articles from different persons?
Yeah, I think yeah, we have about 22, 23 of them contributing to this edition, and some of them are very well known, high-profile personalities. And if we were not to get all these kinds of mix, then it wouldn't have been a success. And having an issue like this, very controversial and divisive, then only picking one side and leaving the other side would have been I think, a disservice to the publication. So we took our time and we pulled all these concerned countries, knowledgeable experts from this region and outside this region, and elsewhere where we have similar issues like the Mekong in Asia, to give us their experience, because they have relatively better platform on this. And then we also try to bring in the young in the region and the leaders and the farmers. So how did we get all this? Then it was, I think, partly of hard work and luck, I think. And then we somehow pulled the leaders of two countries, at least the Ethiopian Prime Minister,
the former Ethiopian Prime Minister,
one, and then LCC, President LCC,
current President of Egypt.
Yeah, and then addressing to the way we designed it is like, if it were just simply a contribution from them, I think it will always be an official statement of their respective countries. So what we did here is we talked to the Falahin, which is the peasant of how they call it in Egypt, and then we talked to him.
Can we call them farmers?
Farmers, yeah, farmers in Egypt, in Luxor, I think.
Luxor, yes.
Luxor, yeah. Okay. And then one of our editors went there, talked to him in person, and captured his anxieties, fear, insecurity. And then we approached the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, to address his problems, if he can, in a very, very ordinary language. And then we had our own farmer around the source of the Nile, the ADDIS, Member Dogu, and then we do a conversation with him about the challenges of Ethiopian farmers, the drought, the famine, the food insecurity, and then we took that subject to President LCC, and we asked him to address us. So we intermingled the ordinary citizens and then the high-profile people, and that's why we also subtitled it as the shepherd and the sheep. And the other ones is just about hardworking, just contacting them, going through so many conversations, and then securing their contributions.
Yeah, it's very interesting to get an article from head of state, from President El-Sisi. How about the essence of his article? How did you find it?
Well, I think it's positive. He tried to portray, in a diplomatic manner, his wishes for both countries, for Ethiopia and his country, and for the region. All the words there are about cooperation, about peaceful resolution of disputes. So I think it's a very appropriate one. Well, how does it inform the current situation is a different matter. But that message in itself was a very good, it was written in a good spirit, and I hope this spirit will sustain.
Yes, yeah. Well, you don't get the flesh of the matters in such statements from head, but the gesture is one thing that we wanted, and they were also trying to address the particularities, points raised by the farmers, And the fact that he was just willing to contribute should mean something. It's something that gives a full picture in our in what we carried out here in the publication.
And former Ethiopian Prime Minister Helmer Desalegn, we find also his contribution in this discourse. How about his message to the Egyptian farmer?
Yeah, that's one thing. I think one gap you would see as a journalist, as an analyst in this whole discourse between Ethiopia and Egypt vis-a-vis the Nile is that there has been conversations going on between the states, heads of states or whoever is leading them, the two countries. But you don't see a conversation between head of state with the ordinary citizens of the other end. Or if I go more on this, you don't see Ethiopians at the grassroots level, as ordinary people, communicating to Egyptians who are also on the same level. So we wanted to really cross this line, just the communication going on between heads of states, governments only, and then we wanted to. So Prime Minister Hailuan tried to understand Falahin Ahmed's concern that usually the narrative in Egypt is that if Nile is blocked or dammed by Ethiopia, then that will be the end of history, the end of Egypt. So the Prime Minister was trying to really talk into that nothing like that is happening. Ethiopia will never be such inconsiderate in doing that. So he was assuring the Egyptian Falahin that that will never happen. Whatever he's hearing from the media, from his officials, is not necessarily the truth. So he was directly talking to him in this matter.
What is the intersection point? What's common in the two articles?
One is the desire, to prosper together, for mutual development, and the other is to avoid misperceptions. Mainly the problem is about misperception. I'm not saying there are no real issues, practical issues, but they are not to deter us from dialogue, from talking to each other, and from seeking a win-win solution. There's always a solution, as long as you don't resort to force, to violence. You can compromise, you can give and take. So I think that is the spirit in both articles. The anxieties of the farmers is clear, is on the ground, but some of these fears, some of these perceptions have been piled up over the centuries without good reason, without good evidence. There's no interest to harm Egyptians on the Ethiopian side, and I think the Egyptians also need to understand our need for development, for energy, what have you. So in fact, LCC's letter is penned in that direction, which is solving disputes in an African way. African problems need African solutions, but what we are seeing today is not that. There's external interference by other countries which have nothing to do with the real issues on the ground except their own national interest. So I think that spirit should be maintained, and if at all there is a need for other actors to come in, we have Africans, we have the AU, we have the office at Entebbe, the NBI, Nile Based Initiative. So we need to chart the future along this direction.
How about the Declaration of Principles?
Yeah, Declaration of Principles.
Before that, why they failed to strike a balance in the win-win solution?
WinWin Solution. I think it will take time before we get there. It is something that has been there for a while. There are two things I want to really raise here, trying to bite into the Ethiopian perspective. One is, you were asking Mike earlier that why we call it water catching fire, and it's water, fire. They seem to be incompatible, but it seems like the one dispute is leading to the other. So war on the Nile has never been stopped. It has been all going on, just in different ways, at different levels, in different scales. That's one thing. And the other thing is, Egypt has been winning this war all the time. We seem to convince ourselves of winning little battles here and there, but what's the end game of this thing? Are we using Nile? We are not yet. And then Egypt has been in a monopoly using it all the time for centuries, and this should tell us that there has been always a war going on, which means a fire going on, and we have always been on the losing side. That should be taken home. People may understand that we defeated them at Gundet, at Gura, at different battles, but those are just little battles that didn't really change the game of the thing. So this is a war or a debate to bring the whole lopsided hegemony into balance, and whoever is the incumbent beneficiary is holding it hard and fighting back, and we are not yet on the out of the waters. Yeah, we're still trying to get the balance. So it's not easy to strike the balance. It's not a diplomatic issue. It's not a political issue. It's something deep rooted into the benefits, securing benefits, and then one will always fight for the status quo, and the other will always be restless in reversing it. So I will see a hope of balancing it after the girdle is completed and filled, not before that.
So how do you describe me the current situation in this discourse in connection to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Hydropower?
Yeah, well, girdle is something I think I penned one article a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years ago, which is a game changer from the Ethiopian perspective. It's a power dam, just merely to produce a dam. So except for the few years of filling it up, it won't change the volume of flow to Egypt, that matter. And in that case, it should have been less controversial. The reason why you see a whole dust and smoke is because it has a different element of changing the game. So the girdle is at the heart of changing the status quo, as I told you. So the Egyptians are doing anything they can before that happens. So you're seeing the last what they call victory lap fight, or to cross the line where the things will configure very differently. So that's what we see. So we are in a very heightened fight over the girdle because nearing its completion. So the Ethiopians should really save their breath to really feel it and see it through. Before that, you won't see any change, except all kinds of different battles where we, in the sum total, we end up being the underdog and losing it to Egypt. That's how I see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Regarding the current situation, the students involved in the scenario building exercise were very spot on. One of the scenarios they foresaw is that there will be, a volatile region, but needing transformational cooperation. That is the scenario that falls within the two good and bad, the best and worst scenarios. That is the area where they were trying to explore. The other scenarios are either less likely or they are not desirable. So now we see clientelism, we see external meddling, we see domestic instability in the countries concerned. So all these add up to a volatile region. So how do you come out from this? It is through transformative cooperation. I think that should be the way forward, and it can be done through the Nile Basin Initiative. The cooperative framework agreement is the start. They can build to bring about a comprehensive agreement whereby Egypt and Sudan, which have not signed yet in the CFA, can also be part. And there is a need for institutionalization, like the Mekong Nile Basin. Like the Mekong River Basin Commission. We also need a commission where we can, pursue the dialogue and monitor the operational aspects as well after the projects are completed. This is just one project.
What's your personal comment on external meddling, the inclusion of the World Bank and the Americans in the negotiation?
Yeah, the World Bank and the US, I think they have gone beyond their mandate in this. In fact, there was no need for them to come in the first place. But having come as observers, they overstepped their boundary and are now trying to act like arbitrators, and very forceful arbitrators at that. Very imposing, which is not helping the process. It's actually derailing it.
Yeah, if I add one point here, yes, they went beyond their the initially assumed or perceived role, but I think on our part we were naive to bring them in or being invited to Washington negotiation table. What I see here is two things. Regarding GERD, we can always negotiate with the low ripened countries and address their concerns. There are other concerns like how many years do you want to fill it up? That's one thing that we should really address. The other thing is the environmental safety and other things. And there are other things that we failed to do to sell it to them, either on our part not communicating it rightly, or on other part not being ready to understand it. This GERD thing is very, very beneficial to all of us. It has a very, very good value for all countries, ripened countries. But Egypt is trying to get it out of the ripened table to Washington DC and trying to make it like a water sharing issue agenda, and we should never touch water sharing agenda without involving all the basin member countries. With regard to GERD, we should never touch it with other third-party countries except with those who are concerned where the river starts and flows into.
Let's get back to discourse. We can find a given author here. He has written about the seniority and sovereignty of the Nile in terms of geography, history, and culture. How do you explain me the essence of this?
Yeah, we're trying to put them in their respective blocks, and some of them are about the culture, the history, the civilization. It's not just a river. It's It's more complex than that. There is humanity in it, civilization, society, culture, what have you. And in there, you would find one author who penned about the Nile around 100 years ago, nearly 100 years ago, Emil Ludwig, and he was just trying to treat the story of the river as a man's story, relating it to the sides, to the animals, to the landscape, to geography, to everything, and all the things. After that, there is history, there is culture. So all this indicates that Nile was there before the countries were there. So it's definitely a senior material compared to the countries, especially compared to countries to their their recent shape and interest and the like. So the Nile should, in a way, own them. And what you see here is the fight the countries to own it. When the Nile tries to own them, then because of its seniority, the countries have sovereignty, of course, we indicated that, then that means Nile becomes a connecting element, not a dividing element. That's what we try to say about it.
The same author has mentioned the Nile as the Blue Nile. The rain took the rain as a mother, and the mountains the father. There's a figurative speech.
That was a beautiful thing. No, and it's a figurative and it's a real thing. That's how the river is born. You know, all the winds that come from the Atlantic Ocean carry the vapors, the wet, and then we were trying to pass it over, and the mountains block them and arrest them right there. And it's well, it's not literal, but it means also the same thing. It's the volcanic mountains of Ethiopia that are bringing the rains. That's where the Nile is born, and then the writer beautifully depicted as the mountain as the father and the rains as the mother, and Nile is born. And you can also go further, see the two brothers Niles meeting in Khartoum. One I think travels a bit longer than the other, so the other younger brother comes and gives it more energy and life. They join together like they are meant for one mission. It's a beautiful description of the Nile I have ever read.
Sure. In another article in that edition also, the Ankh, which is very symbolic of the relations, the age-old relations between Ethiopia and Egypt. It is a kind of a cross, but with a circular head. It's in line with what Dada said, and was what the author tried to depict. This huge basin is like a womb, and the Nile going up to the mitral is like a fallopian tube, giving birth to life. So it's more than figurative. It is feeding about 300 million people in the 11 countries of the basin.
And Mr. Manasseh, Mikhail Manasseh, your article, Count Together, is also included in this discourse. What's the main message you want to convey in your article, your script?
Yeah, you see, if you see people along the Nile, they have this unique symbol, the Ankh. Our mothers, they etch it on their forehead, and sometimes in other parts of their body, but usually on the forehead. It's the Ankh, which is also found in Egypt. In fact, it's been discovered at Abu Simbel, which is an archaeological site of more than 3,000 years. So we see it there, carved out of stone into a rock. So this is symptomatic of the ties between the two countries. In fact, not only between Ethiopia and Egypt, but also between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, because all along this line it is similar culture. You see the plethora of cultures which are in fact, even the archaeological findings there in Meroe, there is inscription of Izana. So there has been an intermingling of cultures, civilizations. So that article is partly to depict this age-old relationship.
May I add also, in some sense, the title of the article itself is very, very, very catchy. It's tattooed together. It means we are tied into one without the possibility of a divorce. We can only manage it. That's, and in the things he see in the Ankh, he described on the foreheads of Ethiopians, I think, is in the Ago area mainly. And the Egyptians have the same tattoo on their back, which is exactly the same thing. And in the inscriptions and in the stones, in the rocks he described, it's like if you collectively try to figure out, it is a failure of humanity not to cooperate over the Nile and try to fight it your way out. It's just one village in Amharic. It's just one river community. Even the cultures indicate that. Even the stories, the narratives tell you all that. And the best optimization comes from cooperating, and everyone will win, everyone will benefit. So I would consider it as the failure of total humanity in not elevating it to make it a very, very area of cooperation than competition.
By the way, we have it also on our alphabet, which we have been using it, still using it from ancient times. The Tomaskal, that is the Ankh sign, and you see it everywhere.
Let's put emphasis on the win-win approach. In most of the articles, this is central. And what are the major message that you've put in this?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Egypt should stand for Egypt to understand. Ethiopia has never been. Nile has been flowing for years and years and years. Ethiopia was there, Egypt was there. There was no time where Ethiopia tried to use it irresponsibly, inconsiderately. So the Egyptians should know that the Nile can be in a better hands where there is cooperation and understanding between the two. I think the utter failure on this side would be that they can sustain the hegemony they have been. I sometimes call it hydraulic colonialism, hydrocolonialism in a way, because they are just trying to really maintain, preserve that forever, and that's not possible. And going to conflict because of this will be the stupidest thing to do. So they should understand that what has been there cannot continue. That Ethiopians will not. We should be able to use the resource, the Nile resource, and other neighboring riparian countries as well. We Ethiopians should also understand that Egypt has some real concerns, and we should address to them. And mostly the Ethiopians fail not to talk to the Egyptians directly. The relationships, the talking, the conversation is limited to the government to government, and we're not tuning into the progressive groups, thinkers, scholars there, and the people. So it should allow GERT to come into life, and then a lot of cooperation can be taught or sought afterwards. So there is no need for a conflict. There is no need for Egypt to just simply trying to maintain the hegemonic she has been riding all the time, as if it can sustain it forever. This is the time to change, and the Ethiopians should also be concerned about their brothers in Egypt.
Very shit.
Well, the Egyptians, some Egyptian writers here also, they have come to realize that this historic rights, the claim of historic rights of Egypt over the Nile, the sole, property, owning and monopolizing it, does not, it's not an option. Some of them have written that Egypt has to take this as a reality. It's a de facto, it's something on the ground, and has to live with it. In fact, has to maximize this opportunity, for regional cooperation. Some of them even say that Egypt has for long shunned the region, in fact, Africa, inclining more to the Middle East, the Arab world, and this is a very good opportunity to, make the shift of emphasis to the region. So I think the one writer, the Zeleka, also emphasizes that the modifications, the amendments that the Egyptians are trying to put in the CFA, now they are veering away from the CFA actually completely, but I don't think they will completely ignore that, because most of the countries subscribe to that. So those two amendments, like replacing the word significant harm by adverse effect, is bringing or lowering the international minimum standard of vulnerability of dams to lower riparian countries. So this is not in line with international water law. I think if they can abrogate this adamant view, then there's the solution, a win-win solution.
And we find Professor Baharuzadeh. He has written under the title, "It is the dam, stupid." Who is saying this? And why do you think someone is saying this?
I think it is with the editors we put the title. Professor Baharuzadeh's article was penned under the elusive dam, the seeking dam around the Tara.
The quest of.
And what I'll tell you in a minute why we call it the dam stupid. It's just an expression.
It is the dam.
It's the dam
stupid.
Yeah, it's the dam stupid.
Who do you think is saying this? Who told us this?
What we
I don't think the author is saying this.
It's not the author. It's the title that precedes all the titles under it. So his title, you will find it right after that, the elusive cost for the dam in the dam. But it's the dam. Stupid means it's all the fight, the controversy, the debate, and all these different games interplays is about the dam. It's just an expression from the adopted from the USA political language. I think they call it's the economic stupid. So it's taken from that and adapted to our publication. If I may say a couple of things on.
So you're telling me that he's not referring anyone?
No.
Actually, the title of his article is right here: "The Elusive Quest for the Tana Dam." So they are not his words.
This was a categoric title we gave it, or editors gave it to, where the different issues of the dam come under. And Professor Baharuzadeh, one fine article I have never read. I was just the first time it landed in our hand, I was just enjoying it. We didn't know a lot about it. There was a boundary debate and agreement between Ethiopia and the UK as an colonial power over Sudan and Egypt, I think. And then they were trying to make a deal on building a dam on a river, and they were just offering a lot of money, trying to cajole the emperor or emperor to, make him, convince him to.
Was it in the 1920s?
Yes,
or 1930s?
yes, exactly. I think when he was assuming power during Emperor Zoditu, and then afterwards. So it was not only one time; they were just pushing it all the way, and then you could see the Ethiopian psyche even then, even under the emperor, where there was a need for a lot of money, and the dam was to be physically built in Ethiopia, which might have indicated some leverage on our side, but he was resisting it, rightly so, because if we were to build a dam, we will build it ourselves, and I think that's a very common trait you could see along all Ethiopian rulers, and that should be a reminder to us now that the Nile, in the Ethiopian part, any dam on the Nile, it should be always a sovereign matter to us. We should manage it. We should control it. We shouldn't outsource it. We shouldn't share it with anyone in any way. It's something that shouldn't be compromised. So, coming to Professor Barazode, one very interesting article I recommend. I think we'll touch upon all the writers we have here in a way. We should, because just in a way to interest our readers, should look for it. So Professor Barazode was trying how the Ethiopians were trying to navigate through this dam negotiation. Even in the earlier times, and he was just tying it into the present, into the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah, the Egyptians, during the ancient times, have been sending the Ethiopian rulers lavish gifts, along with the patriarch. We used to import patriarchs from Alexandria. That is to just placate them and not to use the Nile or not to block it. It was mainly a misperception at that time. Even now, there's no such a thing as blocking it. Even
and the king emperor played a bit into it, I think.
Yeah, Emperor Zara threatened the Egyptian pharaohs of the time, because the the Coptics, the Orthodox Christians in Egypt, were being harassed. In fact, Debre Mitmag monastery was demolished. That's why he built another one here in Ethiopia, which is a very famous place here. So in solidarity of the Coptic Christians who are Orthodox Christians, and also because the Mamluks in the Ottoman Turks were also expanding their interest. So in retaliation of that, he was threatening. It's only now that Ethiopia is actually building a dam on the Nile. So this is a very big thing. It has become a reality. So as I was saying earlier, they were trying to bribe the Ethiopian rulers through gifts, because they thought that one day they would block it. The sad thing is, now other countries are trying to bribe us. $5 billion if you do that, if you cooperate with Egypt, and that is uncalled for and not the right thing to do.
Why do you think that we find this expression, "is it a dam," stupid?
I think Dada has explained it very well. It's an expression to indicate the various dimensions of the dam, which is at the heart of the conflict, at the heart of the cooperation, which is we are seeing unfolding.
All right. Let's see.
He didn't seem to be convinced. Do you think we're trying to ridicule the dam? No, I think it's it's everything falls into that debate. That's what the expression tried to.
Yes, all right.
Yeah.
Let's see the cooperation in the Mekong River.
Okay.
What are the lessons to be drawn in the Mekong River cooperation? You have mentioned it, the Commission. In connection to this river, we find Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and other countries in this region. What can we learn from it, and what are the lessons to be drawn from this Mekong River cooperation for the Nile riparian countries?
I think Professor Nulek, he is also a very important person in that commission, sent out a letter that says a letter from the Mekong to the Nile. One thing there is that it has somehow a resembling characteristic to the Nile because it connects a lot of countries also, and there were conflicts and disputes around it. I think the UN was heavily involved and the countries were wise enough to come up to one working platform to cooperate around it, and now you would see a very, very exemplary cooperation among different countries, and they are just benefiting a lot from it. One thing would be they have established a central management where all issues and data and research and studies come into one. They have structured a very, very beautiful mechanism, like where leaders are involved, the commissioners are involved, and all their issues are addressed. And the river is being used now as a development material and a very cooperation ground for all countries. And there is a lot to learn from them, starting from how the countries are trying to maximize their cooperation. One thing we addressed in our issue is there is a whole divergent, yawning difference on how to optimize the benefits and how to bring the use, because the starting point is not fair, because one is right in controlling the whole thing, the monopolic start, and the others are starting, so the ones that is that's ahead is trying to maintain the status quo, the inequality which is already there. The Mekong countries have really gone a lot for the many years in using this to the best. First, it's a win-win. There's no situation of conflict. There's no situation of one being forgotten and one using it in full. The other thing is they are really maximizing the use of those, even that's what's compatible to the best life durability of the river. In this, a lot of water is being lost to evaporation, a lot of water is being wasted to really high water demanding crops in Egypt. They're misusing it in everywhere, they're just pouring it to their streets and the like. And yet we're in conflict here over a dam, which is meant for electric production. So you can see when an example of good cooperation can take you as a society to benefit a lot. That's what I would say.
Okay.
And the closest we have come in this direction is the CFA, which, if signed by all parties, can lead to the institutionalization of the Commission, which will help a great deal in resolving conflicts, in monitoring and controlling operational aspects, maximizing resources, doing research and all that, as Dada said. So it may seem a bit hard for the Egyptians to come to terms with this, because it's in their constitution also to safeguard the status quo. the historic rights. But constitutions do change as long as they bring a win-win solution.
And you don't constitutionalize a river that belongs to many.
Exactly.
We have also another cooperation between the United States and Canada. They are also cooperating on Colombian River. Do you find it as exemplary for the Nile riparian countries?
Well, I think we can learn a lot from all these cooperation mechanisms. Even in Turkey, they have this river. I think Turkey is building several dams, more than 9 dams in the last few years, and one big dam, it is filling it, I think next month, regardless of the opposition by ERA, a downstream country. But they are still negotiating. So what you just mentioned and other, mechanisms can be looked into, and we can learn something from, from each.
So is it the missing pillar cooperation? I think, is it the missing pillar among the 3 countries, particularly between Ethiopia and Egypt?
Yes, cooperation is the missing pillar. Do you know where Professor Salma wrote an article here? He's a Sudanese and well-known authority on that. Says that even GERD can be financed and owned by all the riparian countries because the missing pillar it can only be won by cooperation. I mean, the Nile can only be solved and won by cooperation, not in any other way. Not in the way Egypt is trying. It might give a wrong signal that because it has been doing this for a very, very long time, but this is not going to continue. So Egypt has to come to its senses, and it will benefit better. That's what I say.
And finally, I want you to comment on the media in this region. Egyptians, I think they are doing very much on it. From the Ethiopian side, we don't see the media actively engaging in this debate. So, how do you find the impact of the Egyptian media in this discussion?
I think the Egyptian media is a reflection of what has been building on over centuries, the misperceptions, the fears and all that. But I think there's also manipulation, trying to influence policy, through trying to quench the interest of certain interest groups in the Arab world and beyond. So I think this discourse is an attempt to bring a balanced view, of the discourse itself. And although we are not doing that right now because we are not working with the institute which publishes discourse now, but I think the institute will have its own way of pursuing this, and even the other media institutions here should do the same, bring in all the various perspectives so that people have a very sane discourse, a very balanced understanding of the issues at hand. But definitely some of the trends in the Egyptian media are now destructive. But that doesn't mean there are no voices, positive voices, healthy signals coming out as well. I read some, very good views as well, although they are not that much dominant.
I think I see one gap I see here is on the Ethiopian side not trying to reach or not doing enough to reach the Egyptians, ordinary Egyptians. There are just many progressive voices, like you said. Only we are not addressing them. And what they think is like there is a water that goes to Egypt, and Egypt is totally dependent on the water. And they might always assume that one day Ethiopia will wake up and block. And what kind of uncomfortability would create among the Egyptians. We should know that. We should address the Egyptians, and we should not have whatever print media or radios that talking to the Egyptians in Arabic and in the language they can hear. We should write and reach them. We should connect our universities between their universities, institutions to institutions, and all the like. There are also some really slow coverage of the issue. It's not as much as it is. It's great to Ethiopians. It's not as much as strategic to Ethiopians to addressing to the Ethiopians themselves. But that's the real gap I see, and I think that's all I can say.
Thank you very much for your time and brilliant explanation.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Well, dear viewers, that's all the program in this edition. See you next time with yet another edition of the program, ADDIS Dialogue. Goodbye.
ነፃ ነን ምን ለመሄድ